welcome to the weekly webinar. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about what we call non-scale victories. So any achievements from a health or lifestyle perspective that are not necessarily going to be evident on the bathroom scales. So I think it's really important to have a deeper understanding of exactly what goes on the inside, and it's far more motivating to keep going with these healthier lifestyle habits longer term as well. As always, I have Nicole here with me today, and she will be helping me to answer any questions you may have. So any questions at all as we progress, whether it's about this topic or about something else you'd like to ask me, please feel free to start tapping away anytime from now, and we'll get to any questions that you might have. So I created this little tip of the iceberg image a while ago, which I think, really summarizes what we're going to be talking about today. So the tip of the iceberg is the bathroom scales. That's the thing we see. That's the thing we're all aware of if we gain or lose weight. And so it's commonly the thing or the unit of measure that we use to monitor our progress. And it can be, as some of you may have found out along the way, a little bit frustrating. And for some, enough to throw in the towel if you don't think that number is moving as quickly as you would like it to. So I think it's really important to understand what is causing that weight in the first place and all the processes that need to occur in order for that one symptom of metabolic dysfunction to actually move. One probably little known fact is most of us think that we gain weight, and then as a result of being overweight or obese that we get sick. In fact, it happens the other way around. We actually get sick first, so your metabolism is not functioning properly, and then our weight is a problem. So I just think that it's really interesting to tip that on its head, because the reason or the symptom of weight or weight gain is related to metabolic dysfunction. So if you keep focusing on the one symptom, and like most solutions do, just try to put a band-aid on that one symptom, you're never going to have long-term success, which is why it's really important that you understand what's happening under the waterline, as we say, like in this image. So I'm just going to talk through some of these and just give you a little bit more insight into what's actually going on and how amazingly clever your body is at actually turning your health around. And one of the things that happens along the way is that you will notice that you have less body fat, but it's only one of many, many things, and certainly not the most significant one. So there are, 40% of people who are in a healthy weight range have metabolic dysfunction. So have all these things going on under the waterline. So like I said, the weight is really only one of many symptoms. For some, it's not a symptom at all. When I was younger, I was overweight. I got to be 20 plus kilos overweight. And I'm really grateful that I was, because it made me look a lot more closely into my health. And as a result, I'm far healthier today than I was back then. So I think that it's, for some people who are maybe thinner, they're not noticing the weight gain, but they still have high cholesterol, high blood pressure, and a lot of the issues that are going on under the waterline. So the first thing I want to talk about is the way that we store fat. So there are many, not all fat that we store is unhealthy. There's subcutaneous fat that sits beneath our skin, and that's the fat that you can grab. So anywhere on your body that you can pinch a little bit of fat or a roll of fat, then that is what's called subcutaneous fat. That's just beneath your skin. And that fat is not detrimental to your health. That's just normal storage of body fat. Then we have visceral fat. So visceral fat is the dangerous stuff. And that's the fat that sits underneath the wall of muscle, the abdominal wall of muscle, in and around our organs. Now, that's metabolically active fat that is pumping out inflammatory factors and hormones and things all day long. So we want that fat to be as low as possible. Sometimes it's not as visible because it just looks like we're getting a little thicker around the waist, but it's a result of visceral fat storage. So a very unhealthy way to store fat. And then we have liver fat and even muscle fat. So, if we're storing what's called ectopic fat, so outside of the usual way of storing it, such as liver or muscle, this is a really unhealthy way of storing fat as well, and has a really significant effect on the way your metabolism functions. There's no drug, no pill, no supplement that is going to change this. It's a lifestyle factor. And the only thing that's going to turn that around for you is to actually get healthy and authentically get yourself in good shape. And then all of these things will, your body's capable of turning them around. So with your liver function, for example, your liver is really at the center of insulin resistance and many of the metabolic dysfunctions we have. If you drink a lot of alcohol, then it's a given that your liver won't be happy. And most people know that, but there is something called non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And that is a result of lifestyle. That is poor choices in food, high glucose, insulin resistance, and metabolic syndrome. And so, even a couple of 100 grams of stored fat in your liver has a really detrimental impact on it and is going to have a significant impact on your health, from your blood glucose control right through to your cholesterol, blood pressure, and everything else. So part of what we're doing in the program is giving your liver a lovely holiday so that it's able to clear out a lot of that stored fat and enable your body to start becoming more insulin sensitive and starting to function as it should. So your liver is doing a great job. You should be pretty pleased with your liver. If you could sort of have a window inside and see what was going on, you would be absolutely fascinated with how clever your body is throughout the program, regardless of how much you weigh on the scales. Then we have our circadian rhythm. So that's our 24-hour body clock. So we all know about our sleep and wake cycle, but what we're doing on the program is we're trying to get you to eat in the rhythm that your body likes to eat, where then that's going to help you to fall asleep when you need to fall asleep and wake when you're supposed to wake and not be falling asleep in the middle of the day. So that is there to optimize and get you in sync with your circadian rhythm. As a result, it normally improves your quality of sleep, which is then in turn going to lower your cortisol, the stress hormone, and make you feel a lot calmer. We all know when we've had a great night's sleep that we feel so much better. So getting in sync with your circadian rhythm is really important. That's why there's no caffeine after midday, because it's going to take 10 hours for that to actually be processed in your body. So there's a reason for everything that's in your program, and getting you back in sync with your circadian rhythms is super important. Even if you're a shift worker and doing odd hours, you can still be a lot more in sync with your circadian rhythm by following the principles that we give you throughout the program. So it's one thing that a lot of people struggle with is actually finishing eating early enough. But it's extremely important for your cognitive function, for your mental health, for your mood, and for weight loss ultimately as well. So super important to follow the meal timing, and where your body is slowly but surely getting back into a better rhythm. The other thing, the obvious one that we talk about, is your blood glucose regulation. So whether you're somebody who is a little bit insulin resistant, or you're a type 2 diabetic, or you're pre-diabetic, or whatever state you may be in, the blood glucose regulation is one thing. So once we sort of get that under control, you find that you have less cravings, less hunger. We stop that roller coaster ride of blood glucose that you've potentially been on. But a lot of the blood glucose, so if it's spiking regularly, it's causing something called glycation. And that's like cooking your cells, okay? And we can't uncook your cells. It basically kills them. And so that's everything from collagen and looking at your skin and how it ages, all the way through to your internal organs. Now, you've only got so many cells, and once they're cooked, you're done. So we can't stop that process from happening, but if you have a high sugar and high carbohydrate diet, that process happens at an accelerated pace. And we want to try to slow down that deterioration as much as possible. So keeping your blood sugar and blood glucose under control, as you've been doing through the program, is the best chance that you have of doing that. And then obviously with that comes insulin as well. So insulin's a bad guy here. So even if your insulin is able to control your glucose, and your glucose has been in a manageable, in the sort of healthy place, I suppose, if your insulin's working too hard to keep it there, then you still have all of the nasty side effects of what that insulin is doing. It can be increasing inflammation, causing metabolic havoc, basically, pushing up your blood pressure, increasing your LDL cholesterol. All of these things are happening if you're insulin resistant, or if your insulin's just working too hard to keep your glucose where it is, even if your glucose is in the healthy place. So that's why we measure insulin, and that's why it's super important to try to keep it where it is. Now, the other thing is that insulin resistance also causes, and we've talked about this before, sarcopenia. So if you have high levels of insulin, it can actually break down and deteriorate your muscle tissue and make your muscle tissue less insulin sensitive. Now, in that case, obviously our engine becomes smaller. We're losing muscle tissue as we get older anyway, but that's going to accelerate the process. And so from our health perspective, a metabolic perspective, and a body fat and body composition perspective, that's disastrous. So insulin has a profound negative impact when it's high on your overall health and metabolic function. There is some studies that have been released just recently that I was looking at, and the more insulin we require to keep our glucose in the right range, even if your glucose is stable, it places you at 3 times more likely to die of heart disease just from having high insulin levels, even when your glucose is stable. So it does have a significant impact, and it shows you that it's independent of glucose. Blood pressure. So sugar raises your blood pressure more than salt does. I know everybody thinks that it's salt, but sugar is the villain here. So if you are insulin resistant, if you have fatty liver, if you have high cholesterol, all of these things are related to being insulin resistant. Blood pressure is one of them. And some of you may find that are medicated for high blood pressure, that as soon as your insulin drops, you start feeling a bit woozy. And it's because the high insulin was keeping your blood pressure really high, and now it's lowered. It's fairly quick. Your body's able to regulate it. So high blood pressure is really commonly related to too much sugar, too much carbohydrate in the diet, and insulin resistance. And once that's fixed, often the blood pressure will normalize and fix itself. High cholesterol is a real problem for many. We see it coming through in your blood results all day long. So there is a lot of myths and misconceptions out there about cholesterol, and a lot of people feel that it's their genetic predisposition that puts them in that situation. It's rare that it's just genetics. It's 99% lifestyle. And I think, it's really important to know that there is no drug that replaces a healthy lifestyle and a healthy metabolism. There will always be side effects to drugs, and they will never be able to fix all the problems related. They basically can put a Band-Aid on it. So one example of that is just taking statin drugs and not making any changes to your lifestyle. So there are a couple of different types of LDL cholesterol. There's like the large, buoyant type of fluffy, healthy LDL cholesterol, which is no harm to you at all and no risk factor. And then there is the small, dense, oxidized LDL, which is the one that's called LDLB, which is the one that is actually dangerous. The statin drugs only lower the fluffy, buoyant one. They don't impact the nasty one. So lowering the level of the good one is not the answer. And the LDL reading that you get in cholesterol is just all of that lumped together. So if you're concerned about cholesterol, it would be a really good idea to consider having a look at some of the further testing you can have done on the particle size of your LDL cholesterol. That we have that test available in the online store, because there's a lot more to it. And statin drugs, the statistic is that they increase your life expectancy by 4 days. So if you're on them for most of your adult life, as many people are, you might be lucky enough to get an extra 4 days life expectancy out of it. And like any drug, they have side effects. So it's really important to consider all options. And as I've spoken about before, collaborate with your doctor on what those options are. We have a question?
Yeah, Kate has just said she's got high blood pressure and high cholesterol, and it's been put down to being hereditary. Is it possible to come off her medications as she noticed a lot of side effects from them?
Kate, I can't tell you to come off any medication. I'm not a doctor and that's not my job. But I can tell you that it's really important to collaborate with your doctor on all of your options available. If you're doing the program, I'm going to assume that you've had some weight to lose and some metabolic conditions to correct. So often, once you get to a point where you have been stable at a really healthy weight range for an extended period of time, and I'm talking maybe 12 months plus, then would be the time that your doctor may consider reducing your medications and then monitoring how you manage without them. But that would be something that you would need to do in conjunction with your doctor and be very carefully monitored by your doctor to make sure that that's the case. I mean, most people will know that their blood pressure is dipping too low. If you've got a monitor at home, you can see it, but you just feel a bit woozy, particularly going from sitting to standing. With all medication, you have to remember that they were prescribed based on your previous weight, lifestyle, and everything you were doing. So that dose may need to be changed by your doctor as you progress through the program. So that's something that they need to monitor, but it's certainly a conversation you can have. Look, my whole maternal side of my family all died of heart attacks very early. I have a very, very strong family history of heart disease. And so I went to, and I'm talking women dying in their 50s. So when I turned 50, I went and had a calcium score to have a look inside my arteries and things to make sure it was okay. And my score was 0, which means I have 0 plaque in my arteries. So, and my cholesterol's very good. So that's down to my lifestyle. I have if the genetics is like the bullet in the gun and your lifestyle pulls the trigger. Okay. So it's not your destiny. It just means that it's the weak link in your genetic chain. If the chain breaks, it'll break at the weakest link. So if something goes wrong with your metabolic function, it's likely going to result in higher cholesterol. And then it's a matter of knowing whether or what type of cholesterol that is, which is just further blood testing to explore it. But statins may not always be the only answer to you. And like I said, like any drug, they have side effects and may not give you the quality of life that you've been looking for anyway, or the extra life expectancy, which is obviously why we take them. So it's worth a conversation with your doctor, but like I said, he's probably only going to, or he or she will only be open to this once you have shown that you can better control your weight and lifestyle longer term, which obviously you can on the program.
Melissa would like to know, have you treated someone who's had bowel cancer?
Well, I don't treat anybody. We have had many people do the program who have had bowel cancer, yes. Obviously there's many forms of it and many stages of it. And some may have had a colostomy bag and some have recovered fully and had surgery. But, if you've had any form of cancer in your life, this program is really important, because high levels of insulin cause inflammation and accelerate cell division, including cancer cells. So keeping your insulin low and keeping your glucose under control are so important, allowing your liver to function optimally, and keeping your weight under control, your visceral fat under control, and particularly for bowel cancer, fiber. So, we can offer you further consultation if you feel like you need it, but the program is definitely the right thing for you to be doing if that's the case.
We've got another one. How can we have one of those calcium tests?
Janine, if you wanted to have a calcium score done, you would need to visit your GP and ask for it. It's basically done at a radiology clinic where they do, imaging like MRIs and CTs and things, and they inject dye into your arm, and it goes through your arteries, and they get to have a really clear look at the inside of your major arteries around your heart. And you get a score from that as to whether or not you have plaque build up in your arteries, and that score will determine whether or not you need to be medicated, really. But it happens over a lifetime. It doesn't happen suddenly. So, if at 50 I hadn't accumulated any plaque in my arteries, the doctor said, I'll see you in 10 years, because it's not going to happen in a year or overnight or for a few months. It is something that accumulates over a long period of time. Any other questions? Okay. So then the next one I wanted to talk about is your microbiome. So again, a really important part of this whole process is feeding those hungry little microbes that live in your gut. We have so many bacteria that live in our gut, and the balance of those bacteria is very delicate, and it can impact our mental health. It can impact our weight. It can impact our digestion and our quality of life, our absorption of nutrients, so many things. So it's a really important piece of the puzzle to get your health under control. And if you do the 28-day metabolic program and you are still struggling with symptoms of, perhaps IBS type symptoms like bloating or diarrhea or constipation or any of those digestive problems, I would strongly recommend that you consider doing the gut rehab program, where we actually do a microbiome mapping and have a look in further detail at what's going on in your gut. But the program itself, making sure you have fiber. I'm talking a diverse range of plant foods. That's why we say 5 different plant foods in your meals. Fiber. Take your fiber supplement. Nothing to do with regular bowel movements. That's the least of my concerns. The biggest thing is feeding those microbiome. They need to eat something. And if you want the good bacteria to flourish and to kill off the nasty bacteria that live on sugar and refined carbohydrates, you really do need to have the right diet. Also, sleep, trying to reduce your stress, exercise, all of these things contribute to a healthy microbiome. And there's no drug or pill that's going to do that for you. It's a total lifestyle change that I really try to help you to be aware of. And I think it's really important to be curious about what's going on under the surface. And it gives you far more motivation to stick with your program longer term. Any other questions?
Janine would just like to know, following her last question, once plaque is detected, can it be reversed?
No. But you can stop or slow significantly further deposition of plaque. So once your arteries are occluded and they've become narrow and stiff because of plaque, that's heart disease. That's called heart disease. You can't reverse it. You can reduce inflammation. You can reduce your weight. You can stop eating the foods and doing all the things that are causing that issue. Things like cigarette smoking, all of these things are terrible for your arteries. And that's why they increase your risk of heart disease. So You can't reverse it, but you can slow the process and stop further plaque being deposited.
Caroline would like to know what the best fibre supplement is.
Oh, I've got a good one coming up, but we're just doing a bit of a clinical trial on it shortly. So I'm very excited about this one. But in the meantime, I'd suggest just some psyllium. You can use psyllium husk, or we've got something called Tri-Fibre, which is available in the online member store, which is a mix of 3 different types of fibre, both soluble and insoluble. But if you do psyllium, make sure it's plain psyllium husk. You can buy them just at the supermarket, or Metamucil capsules, not powder, because it's, bright orange and full of artificial sweetener or sugar. But you can have just the plain psyllium or Metamucil capsules if you don't like taking the powder. Some people even just sprinkle it on their food and are happy with that as well. Okay. The other thing is muscle tissue. And I've done a recent webinar all about muscle, and it's our engine. And if you allow insulin resistance and inactivity to allow your muscle to deteriorate and end up in a state of sarcopenia, which is the fancy medical name for muscle loss through aging and inactivity, then you're going to be in trouble. Your muscles are no longer sensitive to insulin. They don't function, they don't do their job in your metabolic function. Your joints will deteriorate because there's no strength around them to support them. Your engine is smaller, so you require less fuel. So you'll store more fat, even if you're having less. You might weigh the same that you did 10 years ago, but your body will be getting a bit soft and gooey because you're losing muscle and gaining fat. And so, and then we blame that on aging. That's not aging. That's just you're not training. You need to train 3 times a week. I train now religiously 3 times a week, and I lose muscle much faster than I did 10 or 20 years ago. And it's harder to get it back, but I can still do it. At any age, you can gain muscle tissue. Even if you've never had good muscle tissue before, it doesn't stop you. So muscle is super, super important. There's recently a meta-analysis, which is a compilation analysis of 128,000 participants in studies. And they found across the board that physical activity, regular physical activity, greatly improve people's mental health. So I think, that alone is a reason to exercise, let alone all the other benefits that you get from exercising. And last but not least, fat loss, okay? And it's not just the scales. I think, you can have some changes in your body composition that are really positive. That's why we also do waist measure, because you'll often see that shift as well, depending on how you carry your body fat. But, fat loss will happen. But like I said, it's this tiny little tip on the iceberg. It's not what's going on underneath. So, I'm disappointed when I hear someone say, oh, the weight's not coming off fast enough. And your body, you're sort of berating it for trying to work as hard as it can. You may not have served your body that well or looked after it that well for quite a long time. And sometimes it needs to start recovering some of these processes that are working in your metabolic system. And you need to be a little bit patient and allow it to do its job. It's doing it. It's just depending on, what stage it's starting from. If you've got, a bit of a rusty old engine going on in there, it's going to take a while for your body to start firing on all cylinders. So sometimes you just need to be a bit kind to it and a bit patient with it, and it will do its job so well. I just think it's really important to know that all of this stuff is going on under the waterline, and that we need to just be a little bit patient from the weight side of things. It's only one tiny little part of what's happening. It happens to be the one that you can measure easily and frequently at home, for better or for worse. But I think that it's really important to acknowledge what your body's actually doing underneath the surface. Do we have any more questions? No more questions? I'm thinking next week. I don't think I've scheduled one in next week, but what I thought I might do is actually do a bit of a Q&A, because I've got some really cool questions coming through from you, and I just wanted to address all of them. So I might do a bit of a, like, mix it up a bit. And so if you've got any further questions, you're welcome to submit them on the forum or via support@astonrx.com.
Janisha said she's struggling with sugar cravings today. Any tips for her?
Yeah, so Janine, struggling with sugar cravings. I'm glad you learnt heaps, Michelle. Thank you. That can be many things, Janine. It's often because your insulin's high for whatever reason. Now, that could be stress related. It could be that you had a really crappy sleep last night. If you remember the webinar that I did and talked about the continuous glucose monitor, and I had a busy brain and a bad night's sleep, and my glucose was high all day, just randomly, even when I hadn't eaten anything, just fasting. So, cortisol has a significant impact on it. You might just need to be a bit kind to your body, go for a nice walk, get outside, do everything you can to allow your insulin levels to come back down to normal. And, think it's often a sugar craving because your insulin's too high. And what that does is it sucks too much glucose out of your bloodstream and leaves you with low blood sugar. Brain panics, I need to eat something sweet now. And so eating something sweet is just going to keep the roller coaster going. What you need to do is step away from the kitchen or the candy store and go out and have a walk, and do a bit of relaxing, or have a power nap or something that's going to bring those levels back down to normal and allow you to get back into your stored fat. Any other questions?
Just a lot of thank yous.
All right, great. I hope that helped. I think it's really important that you understand these things. I do, and that's what motivates me to stick with the lifestyle that I have. It's not to look a certain way. It's not to be a particular number on the scales. It's got nothing to do with that. The reason I do what I do is because I have a lot of respect for every organ that is working as hard as it possibly can in my body. And I just want to give it the best chance to be healthy so that I can keep doing what I love to do. That's my reason for doing this. So I think it's far more compelling than just trying to weigh a certain number on the scales. And when you realize what a small tip of this whole equation is weight, then I think that it starts to make a little bit more sense. All right, guys, have a great rest of your week, and I look forward to chatting next week. Thanks. Bye.